The future of China looked grim, not because of economic forecasts, but due to a catastrophic live broadcast incident involving one of China's most esteemed economic journalists. The reason for the uproar was astonishing. During a reporting trip to Singapore, he had dared to compare the realities he witnessed there with those in China, exposing his findings live on air. Following the broadcast, Chinese netizens erupted in fury. The video spread like wildfire across various media and social networks. Despite aggressive deletion efforts by authorities, the content creators, using VPNs, continued to disseminate the footage, baffling even the Chinese government, which scrambled desperately to contain the fallout. This veteran journalist had, for years, championed the narrative that Singapore was a declining nation. What had he truly seen in Singapore to provoke such a radical shift in his perspective? What astonishing truth had he stumbled upon? I am Long Bawang, an economic journalist for Huaxia Economic Times, working at our Beijing headquarters for a decade. I began my last national broadcast. My task has been to analyze Singapore's economy. A relatively straightforward assignment, as it is, by all accounts, a nation in decline. Singapore's economy is beyond recovery, and the gap between it and China is insurmountable. These were my confident assertions last week, delivered live to millions. After the broadcast, thousands of social media posts quoting my words flooded the internet, with Chinese citizens enthusiastically embracing my definitive analysis of Singapore's economic limitations. Returning to the office, my editor-in-chief, Xin Jiahao, called me over. Usually, such summons meant praise, but this time, his expression was different. A subtle tightness around his eyes. Bawang, I saw the broadcast. Excellent work. Thank you, editor-in-chief, I replied, a surge of pride swelling within me. Xin Jiahao leaned back deeply into his chair, his gaze fixed on me. Tell me, have you ever actually been to Singapore? The question caught me off guard. No, sir. My analysis is based on comprehensive data. The numbers speak for themselves. The editor-in-chief chuckled, a dry, humorless sound, and pushed a document across his desk. Go to Singapore yourself then. Conduct an on-site interview. Confirm that my words, and yours, are indeed the truth. I opened the document. It was a plane ticket to Changi International Airport, departing tomorrow. The suddenness was jarring. This is quite abrupt, isn't it? For a groundbreaking report, one must endure sudden business trips, he said. It was originally meant for Xiao Ming, but he had a last-minute emergency. I thought you would be a better fit to go in his stead. Consider this an opportunity. Go, witness Singapore's decline firsthand, and you'll be able to write an even more impactful report. I nodded, a flicker of my old confidence returning. I'll go. I will see Singapore's true situation with my own eyes. That evening, I posted a short message on WeChat, starting field interviews in Singapore tomorrow. I will thoroughly expose the true state of Singapore's economy. Stay tuned. Comments flooded in instantly. Reporter Long, we trust you. Please take many photos and show us just how much Singapore has declined. Show them the greatness of China. As I packed my luggage, potential headlines for my report already formed in my mind. On the scene of Singapore's economic collapse, witnessing the poor citizenry of a failing nation, I went to sleep, filled with an almost mocking anticipation of Singapore's downfall. Waking up the next morning, I was brimming with self-assurance as I headed to the airport. I boarded the plane, utterly oblivious that this journey was about to fundamentally alter the course of my life. I arrived at Changi International Airport. The first impression upon disembarking was utterly unexpected. The airport was impeccably clean and efficient. I proceeded to immigration, anticipating long queues and bureaucratic delays, but to my surprise, I cleared the checks in just 5 minutes. Though taken aback, I reminded myself to remain objective. Being swayed by minor details would compromise my journalistic integrity. I hailed a taxi, and the driver greeted me with a friendly smile, speaking in clear, standard Mandarin. "Hello, are you from the mainland?" "Yes, hello," I stammered, looking up in mild confusion. "Welcome to Singapore. There's so much delicious food to try." The taxi merged onto the expressway. The scenery flashing past my window left me increasingly bewildered. The roads were spotless, and the vehicles moved in an orderly fashion. Is this truly a declining nation? Clean roads and orderly traffic? After checking into my hotel, I decided to walk to Orchard Road, Singapore's renowned shopping district. The streets were teeming with people, and the storefronts proudly displayed global luxury brands like Louis Vuitton, Chanel, and Gucci. The shops themselves were bustling with customers, showing no discernible signs of economic downturn. I ventured into a cosmetic store, where a sales assistant greeted me with polite, professional, Mandarin, and impeccable service. As I exited the store, my mind was in a whirl. Professional and courteous staff, a vibrant consumer culture, and an impeccably organized city landscape. These images were a stark contrast to the declining nation I had been primed to expect. For dinner, I chose a high-end restaurant. It was fully booked, predominantly with business professionals. The atmosphere was anything but recessionary. The walk back to the hotel was fraught with confusion. While it was premature to draw conclusions after just one day, everything I had witnessed defied my preconceptions. Tomorrow, the formal interviews begin, I told myself. I will surely find the weaknesses of Singapore's economy. With that thought, I concluded my first day. I woke early the next morning, eager to meet my first interview subject, InnoWave Solutions, a rising Singaporean tech startup specializing in AI-driven translation services. Compared to China's colossal IT enterprises, this must be insignificant, I thought dismissively. InnoWave Solutions' headquarters were situated on the 15th floor of a sleek office building in One North, Singapore's bustling research and development hub. As the elevator doors opened, I saw young employees busily moving about in an open-plan office, a structure that immediately caught my eye. "Hello, Reporter Long." Tan Vai Jian, the CEO, greeted me with a warm smile. He appeared to be in his mid-30s. "Thank you for your interest in Singaporean startups. We hope to expand into the China market someday." I asked with a subtle hint of condescension. "Is InnoWave Solutions struggling to operate without significant government support?" CEO Tan chuckled. "Is that what you believe? We targeted the global market from day one, not just the China market. In fact, 70% of our revenue comes from overseas." He presented me with data that was nothing short of astonishing. They had successfully expanded into Asia, Europe, and the Americas, with their growth trajectory showing a steep upward curve. But could this merely be an isolated success for InnoWave Solutions? I questioned. "Why don't you see for yourself?" he suggested. "There's a Startup Alliance event this afternoon. Would you care to join me?" I accepted CEO Tan's invitation. Upon arriving at the event venue, hundreds of startups had set up booths, and to my surprise, many companies were actively engaged in discussions with overseas investors. "This is a venture capitalist from the United States," CEO Tan introduced, gesturing towards a foreign gentleman. The American investor spoke with conviction. "Singapore's startup ecosystem is incredibly vibrant, especially in AI and biotech. They are truly world-class." His words resonated, a stark contradiction to the image of Singapore I had been fed. After the event, I had dinner with CEO Tan and candidly posed my question. Are all Singaporean startups truly this successful, or did I simply get lucky today, only seeing the successful ones? CEO Tan replied earnestly, "Of course, many startups fail. However, we foster a culture of failing fast and iterating quickly. And our core principle, from the very beginning, is to target the global market." On my way back to the hotel, I felt profoundly perplexed. The confidence and technological prowess I had witnessed today in these startups could not simply be dismissed as luck. If Singapore was truly in decline, why were so many enterprises thriving? That night, as I reviewed my interview notes, I hesitated. I deleted the original title I had planned, The Limits of Singaporean Startups, and instead typed a new one. Singaporean Startups, Embracing the Global Market. The third morning, a mix of anticipation and tension coursed through me as I headed to the Research Institute of Singapore Global Tech, SGT. This, I thought, is where I will finally expose the illusion of Singapore's economy. For years, I had written several reports under headlines like, "Singapore Global Tech Can't Keep Up with Huawei." Upon reaching the imposing main gate of the Singapore Global Tech Research Institute, I was immediately struck by its sheer scale. It resembled a small, self-contained city. Director Lim Wei, who was to be my guide, greeted me with a welcoming smile. "Welcome, Reporter Long. For the next half-day, I will be showing you our innovative research facilities." After completing security checks at the entrance, I received a visitor's badge. Director Lim added with a slight smile, "Photography is prohibited, as we have many sensitive technologies here." Our first stop was the Mobile Technology Exhibition, showcasing a range of cutting-edge devices, from foldable smartphones to rollable displays. "These are prototypes not yet on the market, likely 3 years from public release," Director Lim explained. He then showed me a multifold device, going beyond existing foldables. I was frankly shocked. This was technology I hadn't even seen in China. Aren't Huawei or Xiaomi also developing similar technologies? I asked, trying to regain my composure. Director Lim smiled faintly. They are attempting it, but they haven't been able to resolve the display durability issues. We have already secured technology that ensures over 100,000 folds without problems. Next, we move to the Semiconductor Research Laboratory. The equipment and technology I witnessed here had an even greater impact. This is our next-generation 3-nanometer semiconductor manufacturing process, Director Lim announced. Currently, only a handful of places in the world possess this technology. I was momentarily speechless. This was precisely the technology China had been trying to catch up to for years. Do you know the reason for China's semiconductor development challenges? Director Lim asked. I couldn't answer. He continued. Technology cannot be caught up in a short amount of time. We have over 30 years of specialized knowledge. Manufacturing a single semiconductor chip requires more than 800 processes. If even one fails, the entire batch is compromised. On my way out of the institute, a single question echoed in my mind. Have we been disparaging Singapore all these years simply to align with a government-desired image? That night, in my hotel room, I stared at my interview notes, lost in contemplation. Were the reports I had written until now reality, or merely the reality we wished to see? On the fourth day, I visited MediaCorp Singapore, the nation's public broadcasting organization. In the lobby, I met Sharon Lim, an economic reporter roughly my age. Her business card indicated about 10 years of experience. Reporter Long, your name is well known in mainland media circles. It's a pleasure to finally meet you today. As we walked to the meeting room, Sharon maintained a casual conversation. The interior of the broadcasting station was more modest than I had anticipated, a stark contrast to the opulent headquarters of CCTV in Beijing. I'd heard that Singapore's economy was experiencing difficulties, but that doesn't seem to be the case in reality, does it? I probed. Sharon's expression grew serious. Singapore's economy certainly has many challenges. Middle-aged unemployment, escalating property prices, the low birth rate issue. We produce news stories on these very topics every single day. Even such negative content is broadcast? I asked, genuinely surprised. Of course. It's our job to highlight the problems within Singapore's economy and to criticize the government's economic policies. That is also the responsibility of the media. In that instant, my heart tightened. Producing news that criticized government policy was unimaginable in China. Even so, is there no pressure from the government? I inquired. Sharon laughed. Of course there is, but we fight for editorial independence. Successive governments have attempted to control the media, but each time, we have resisted and protected the freedom we have today. After our formal discussion, we continued our conversation over lunch in the broadcasting station's staff canteen. Sharon naturally pointed out recent issues with government policies, without any apparent concern for those around us. How about in China? She asked. Is there freedom of speech? This question struck me hard, a dull ache in my chest. I couldn't answer honestly. We report in a different way, prioritizing national interests. Sharon's eyes changed, and she seemed to understand the implied meaning in my evasive reply. That must be difficult, as a journalist seeking the truth. Her words stung deeply. Leaving MediaCorp, complex thoughts swirled in my mind. China's media must follow government directives, but Singapore's did not. For the first time, I began to question China's reporting methods. Things I had always taken for granted suddenly felt profoundly unsettling. This was a doubt I had never experienced in my 10 years as a journalist. Back in my hotel room, I stared out the window, lost in thought. What is truth? Were the reports I had written truly factual? On the fifth morning, I organized my interview materials and began to draft my report. Despite immense internal struggle, I resolved to write precisely what I had seen, for conveying the truth was a journalist's sacred duty. Singapore's economy possesses a system to transform crisis into opportunity. As I typed this headline, I hesitated. Such a title might be a shock to Chinese readers. Yet, the facts I had witnessed were undeniable. Singaporean startups were aiming for the global market, and Singapore Global Tech's technological prowess was far more advanced than I had ever imagined. In my introduction, I honestly recounted my initial impressions upon arriving in Singapore, the efficiency of Changi Airport, the taxi driver's kindness, and the vibrant streets of Singapore. In the main body, I detailed the stories of InnoWave Solutions and other startups, as well as the cutting-edge technology I had witnessed at the Singapore Global Tech Research Institute. I concluded the article with a powerful statement. Singapore is not in decline. It is in a process of transformation. It focuses on qualitative growth rather than merely quantitative expansion. And in cutting-edge technological fields, it continues to lead the world. Indeed, there are aspects from which China could learn a great deal. I sent the draft to our Beijing headquarters. 2 hours later, Xin Jiahao, the editor-in-chief, called me via video. Long Bawang, I've seen your draft. His voice was not his usual authoritative tone. It was heavy, laced with a palpable tension. Do not portray Singapore too positively. The government is watching. My heart sank instantly. My draft had apparently already been reviewed by higher-ups. But, editor-in-chief, I merely wrote what I observed truthfully, I protested. That doesn't matter, he hissed, lowering his voice. You must write it as if Singapore is declining. Emphasize China's leadership. Specifically, delete the section on semiconductors. Write that Huawei has already surpassed Singapore Global Tech. I was speechless. That is a complete lie. I cannot do that. If I write something that contradicts what I saw with my own eyes, then I am not a journalist. I am merely a mouthpiece for the government. The editor-in-chief cut me off, his voice firm and decisive. This affects my career, Bawang. Submit the revised draft by tonight. Otherwise, another journalist will revise it under your name. The call disconnected, leaving me alone in the hotel room. I clenched my fists. Am I a journalist? Or a propaganda tool for the government? I stared out the window, my mind a complex tangle of thoughts. How close to the truth were all the reports I had written until now? Were the places I had criticized truly in as dire a state as I had portrayed them? I now stood at a crossroads of choice, to convey the truth or to conform to the system. I tossed and turned in my hotel room, unable to sleep. All night, I lay awake. For years, I had been proud to be a member of the Chinese media, never once doubting the veracity of my reports. But now, everything felt different. At 3 in the morning, I rose from my bed and opened my laptop. I meticulously recalled everything I had seen in Singapore. Autonomous corporate culture. Startups like InnoWave Solutions freely expanded their businesses without government control. Their target market global from the outset. Rapidly advancing technology. The technology I witnessed at the Singapore Global Tech Research Institute was undeniably world-class, especially in the semiconductor field, an area China struggled to catch up with. Freedom of speech. Singaporean journalists could openly criticize government policies, fearlessly pursuing the truth. Transparent administrative system. Singapore's public services were efficient and transparent, exemplified by the impressive orderliness I experienced at Changi Airport. What I had seen was not a declining nation, but one constantly challenging itself. Yet, my editor demanded that I deny all of this, to write lies. If I did not report these truths, I would cease to be a journalist. I looked out the window as the Singaporean dawn began to break. I made my decision, resolving to act according to my conscience. I opened my laptop and drafted an email. The recipient was an independent, anti-establishment media outlet in Hong Kong. I requested anonymity and painstakingly detailed everything from my interview in Singapore to the undeniable truth of the Chinese government's attempts to manipulate the narrative. Before hitting the send button, I hesitated. This action would undoubtedly end my career and perhaps bring about far more severe consequences. But I pressed the button. Then, I sent a message to my editor, stating that my draft would be delayed due to health reasons. I walked out of my room, determined to experience Singapore one last day. I strolled along the Singapore River, contemplating everything I had believed to be true until now. Perhaps they were all lies. But from this moment forward, I vowed to become a journalist who pursued the truth. Watching the sun rise over the Singapore River, I felt reborn. 3 days later, an international news outlet broke the story of my leak. The headline blared, "Chinese reporter exposes Singapore's economic truth, government censorship, and fabricated news." Of course, my name was anonymous, but anyone reading the detailed content of the interview could easily deduce the source. Within China, the report was heavily censored, but it quickly spread among those using VPNs. Social media exploded with various reactions. Long Bawang has been bought off. Is Singapore really that developed? Thank you for speaking the truth. When I arrived at the office, I was summoned by the editor-in-chief. My heart pounded, but I pushed open the door with a sense of resolute calm. "How's the draft?" Xin Jiahao asked, his voice betraying no emotion. I apologize, sir. I'm not feeling well, so it's not finished yet. The editor-in-chief's gaze was sharp, penetrating. That international news report, was it your leak? He already knew. I had no intention of denying it. Yes, it was me. To my surprise, Xin Jiahao leaned back in his chair and sighed. Why would you do such a thing? You must know what will become of your future. I now know what the truth is, I replied, meeting his gaze evenly. A complex emotion flickered in the editor-in-chief's eyes. Was it anger? Or understanding? I couldn't tell. Long Bawang, you can no longer work for our newspaper, he stated, his voice devoid of hostility. This is a decision from above. It was what I had expected. I nodded. I understand. I cleared out my office and left the company where I had worked for 10 years. Back home, I stared out the window, contemplating what to do next. Working for any other media outlet in China was now simply out of the question. My gaze fell upon a small souvenir I had brought back from Singapore, a Merlion figurine. I picked it up, holding it in my hand. The truth will not disappear, I thought. One day, more people will know. 2 days later, I received an email from an independent media organization in Hong Kong. Your courage has deeply moved us. Would you consider working with us? My heart raced. Could this be a new beginning? It would undoubtedly come with dangers, but I had already made my decision. I looked at the Merlion figurine and typed my reply. I accept. I am no longer a tool of the system. I promise all readers that from now on, I will only be a journalist who pursues the truth. That single week in Singapore had profoundly changed my life. I had learned that sometimes, even unpleasant truths need the courage to be spoken aloud. And that courage, I now knew, would lead me to true freedom. This story, seen through the eyes of a Chinese journalist visiting Singapore, starkly contrasts Singapore's dynamic development with China's severe media censorship. Long Bawang, initially arrogant in his preconceived notions, comes to realize his own biases through his first-hand experiences, ultimately finding the courage to pursue the truth. The core message of this narrative lies in the immense power of truth and the invaluable worth of one's conscience. It poses a crucial question. When what we believe clashes with reality, what choice do we make in the face of such a disparity? Bawang sacrifices his career and personal safety, choosing truth, which ultimately grants him genuine freedom. The story highlights the differences between Singapore and China across various aspects, including corporate culture, technological prowess, freedom of expression, and administrative systems, conveying a broader societal message through one individual's profound internal transformation. Through this account, we are prompted to reconsider the importance of viewing the world without prejudice and the enduring value of courage in upholding truth and conscience, no matter the circumstances.